In many ways, I've been indoctrinated by cult aspects of the community. I still have very strong allegiance, even to systems that I don't approve of. I don't approve of the yeshiva system. I don't approve of the Gittin system. I don't approve of the Kiddushin system. I don't approve of the way mikvah and nida is handled and many other topics. But at the same time, I really care about allowing it to continue to exist so that it can potentially course correct.
Welcome to this special episode of Beyond Belief. I had the opportunity to interview a particularly influential figure in the Orthodox Jewish world who is a bit of a rebel rouser and advocate for change. And it felt like a counterpoint to the usual narrative where we are exploring people who've left religion. Here, I chose to talk to somebody who's trying to create change from within. Now, this episode was quite short. We were short on time. And we were plagued by some technical difficulties, although I've tried to make it as smooth as possible. And we also did not, unfortunately, have the time to dive into some of the very niche terminology inherent in the Orthodox Jewish world. So if you're tuning in and this isn't your culture, I recognize the fact that this could be a little bit over your head. Broadly, the discussion, the themes that Adina explores and fights for is women's rights in the community, especially around marriage rights, because what can happen is a concept where the man refuses to divorce his wife. And as a result of that, the woman is stuck for many years, unable to leave. And so she's basically chained to her husband, who usually has a lot more religious freedom to do what he wants. And the woman, while in the religious framework, is kind of much more limited. So that is the gist of kind of what she's advocating for. And then there's a lot of nuance. I could try in the episode notes to leave you with some glossary of some of the terminology used here. But hopefully the broad strokes of what she's trying to do and what we've discussed comes through today, even if the individual details do not. Adina, welcome to...
No, we have to start again. It's not my
Okay.
name for this.
Exactly. Oh, do you not want to go with your actual name?
I go with Flatbush Girl. What are you saying? Does Batman
Nobody
go by Bruce when he's on?
Does nobody know your name, Adina?
Of course they do. I mean, we're not
Okay,
friends.
fine. I'll respect. Yeah, okay, fine. I'll respect your thing.
I'm the
Okay.
same way about my kavod. You have to call me
Exactly.
Flatbush Girl.
Okay, so it's an honorific. It's not so much when I interview ex-Muslims, they sometimes have to use a fake name because they could get killed. And we're much more enlightened as a society, so no risk to you whatsoever. And so that's oftentimes why I sound like extra wary of, am I outing somebody? But welcome to the Beyond Belief podcast. We've known each other casually for many years, but it's an honor to have you on here. And I've been dying to ask you some questions. So it's a privilege to me, honestly. And so I'll tell you, usually this podcast, I interview people who have left religion. And oftentimes people who've left religion is because of issues they have with the religion, personally, ethically, and stuff like that. And I think what I find fascinating about your story is a counterpoint where you've chosen to be at least somewhat religious. We'll dive into what that means for you. You've chosen to stay in the religious community and create change from there. So you're seeing the same issues a lot of us see, but you're choosing to approach it completely differently. And that is at the root of why it feels appropriate for this podcast and what I'd love to dive into with you.
Thank you. Looking forward.
So to start out with, how would you describe your current level of religiosity?
I identify as Frum Orthodox. I use the word Frum and Orthodox interchangeably. I even lean more towards the word Frum. I think there's a little bit more fluidity to that. I identify as Frum.
Okay. And what do you feel? Different people have the different criteria. I grew up in the Kiruv world, and it was like Nida, Shabbos. Like there's like rules of what makes you Frum. What to you? What does that mean to be Frum?
Nida, Shabbos, and Kashrus.
Nida, Shabbos, and Kashrus. Okay. Those are like the big three, and that's puts you in the Frum box.
That's what I think the Frum Island has cut consensus over.
Okay, as opposed to, let's say, conservative Judaism, right? Which may even agree with some of those things. So tell me about your upbringing. You grew up religious, and what kind of environment, what was your home like religiosity?
And I went to BC Yaakov in Flatbush, and it was pretty standard from home, a very kosher kitchen. My parents slept in different beds. And I went to an all-girls school. Shabbos was like extremely central, and yeah, that was how and my whole block was like that. I grew up on a very frum block, tons of kids playing outside. I think that maybe made my home a little bit more distinct is that it was definitely heavily influenced and saturated with modern American culture, music, Broadway, Beatles, radio, movies, all movies. We had dozens. We had probably 3,000 VHSs in our house. Like, the whole block would come over and come to our house like it was a movie theater to rent movies. And even just the books, the bookshelves, I would say that, yeah, we had a beautiful Frum shrunk, but right next to it was a beautiful combination of all kinds of novels, sci-fi, fantasy, fiction, nonfiction, magnificently long encyclopedias, Merck manuals. So I really felt like I was in this middle point fusion center between this massive American Enlightenment home with a very strong yeshivish flavor.
Yeah, yeah. What was it about that because movies, for example, is something that a lot of Frum people would not go to. What was it that allowed even your parents to let themselves expose you and themselves to that amount of American culture?
What do you mean how it wasn't a contradiction? It just wasn't a contradiction. In my school, it wasn't considered appropriate to speak about TV movies during recess with friends. Like, that was considered something like, if that's what your family does, you keep it to yourself. There's a lot of girls in the class who don't even have a TV or VHS, and it's just not appropriate. And then chas v'shalom, that you would go to a movie theater, like chas v'shalom. But my family went to the movie theaters. I guess that influence just happened to me.
Yeah. And what was it like to be in that like Frum environment, that amount of rules and Beis Yaakov and stuff like that? Did it work for you overall?
I would actually say it did work for me. I think I'm someone that, for me personally, I'm a very, you know what? It worked for me, but it worked for me because I also had access to a lot of privilege. So it works for people who have privilege, right? My parents were married. I wasn't stigmatized by them having any marital problems publicly. My parents had a beautiful home. I had grandparents. I had a big thriving family. It just, if you had access to privilege, then the system could really work for you.
People have spoken in the past about how if you're wealthy in the Frum world, you get a much better pass than if you're poor.
Well, for sure. I think there's always going to be that self-consciousness that, like, no one, even the rich don't feel themselves as rich enough. So there's always this gonna, like, keeping up with the Joneses is like a very strong part of any insecure communities, especially ours, especially the Frum community. I would say like, from my class, like, I was definitely above median in the classroom, probably like middle class in the classroom.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point in your life, you would definitely be classified as a rebel, I would say. And were there signs of that, hints of that? Like, how did that emerge? Was there anything in your upbringing that you would point to that allow you or influence how you've become today?
So first of all, I grew up in an environment where my parents allowed me to kind of do whatever I wanted. So because I had this ability to do what I wanted, I never was operating out of fear. I was never really operating out of, I shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. It was more like, okay, like, I felt very empowered to make decisions. And that, alongside the backdrop of just, I always gravitated towards, like, the stories, the books, the movies, even like the biblical passages where someone was doing something different than everyone else and not afraid of being judged, not afraid of criticism. That archetype always was something I admired and something that shaped my personality as I've been reading books since I'm very little.
Yeah, I definitely hear how education actually played a huge part in the free thinking, do what needs to be done. So let's dive right in. The meat of it. What are the biggest issues that you feel are currently present in the Frum world, of which you identify with it, and from within it, glaring issues, I would imagine? And what are some of the things that come up for you?
So for me, I very much care about the health of the community. I feel sometimes like a canary in a coal mine where I can see that there's something very wrong that's going on here, and I don't want to just leave the scene. I don't want to just exit the coal mine and just whatever happens. I care about, in many ways, I've been indoctrinated by cult aspects of the community. I still have very strong allegiance, even to systems that I don't approve of. I don't approve of the yeshiva system. I don't approve the gittin system. I don't approve of the kedushin system. I don't approve of the way mikvah and nida is handled, and many other topics. But at the same time, I really care about allowing it to continue to exist so that it can potentially course correct. I care so much about the Frum Ilam, even if I am, let's say, sometimes in some ways more modern than Lakewood. I want Lakewood to thrive, and I think that they can benefit from certain improvements and some levels of progress, even though that word is so scary for so many people. And I'm here to help. I really am here to help. And if it doesn't work out, then okay, I'll abandon ship. And like you just said, what are the systems that need improvement? Every single one. The whole entire thing is outdated. It was an app. If Yiddishkeit was an app, it needs like a major app update, not like a tiny little one with tiny little bugs. The whole thing needs to be like seriously with a scalpel really fixed.
So I don't usually dive into this, but you and I come from such a, I think, similar and have such a shared understanding that I am still really curious for you. When I look at this from the outside, I think of this as rabbinic Judaism, right? It's the system of 2,000 years of rabbis building and never removing, for example, is one of the key things. And you're basically locked in to a 2,000-year-old system that has very distinct rules of how laws are made and should, like I said, typically added and never removed. So how is it that you can, to quote your own terms, be indoctrinated and buy into the broader beliefs maybe that this is the word of God and the rabbis are extensions of the word of God, and believe that it could be changed because some of the issues that we're looking at that need updating are really deeply rooted. It's not like, oh, some minhag, if you will, between us of like, I don't eat rice on Pesach. It's like the man acquires the woman. The man can have 4 wives, and that's like black and white, 3,000 years old. If there was one question that I guess I want to ask you, it's this. So I feel really satisfied that I got to ask you. How do you even feel that can be changed considering how deeply rooted it is?
Okay, so I thought initially you were going to go into just the general, like for this particular question, I thought you were going to say, like, how do I feel that halakha can be reformed if there's such a clear chain of command and transmission of information consistently over rabbinic Judaism? And then now you're specifically asking me about specifically in the agunah crisis.
Yeah, I was just bringing that as an example. We could stay as broad. To me, it's just agunah crisis is a specific example.
What's better for you? Like, what do you want? Like, how do you, I can answer it either through the lens of agunas or all of the parts of the systems.
We can dive into agunah as a case study of, I think, a larger endemic issue where God said that there should be agunas, is how I look at it. And that's why I left religion, because of that and other things. God put a system in place of agunas, and the rabbis are just carrying it forward. And so you're looking at it and being like, no, we need to change this. And I'm like, to what level are you going? Stated differently, I look at the system and I say it's rotten to the core. And you're like, no, we can fix this. And I'm like, it needs medically assisted death. And you're like, no, we're going to keep. So that's basically, we're both doctors, if you will. So yeah, I'm very curious to hear your perspective.
Okay, I love it, actually. I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a master's in medieval literature. And I have been taught through school to analyze texts through different lenses. There's always a different kind of analysis you can have on an origin. And similarly to the commentators and the mefarshim that we learn, each commentator is assessing it through a particular lens to give a certain style of analysis. When I read Torah, when I read Halakha, when I orient towards my religious identity, my bias is through a feministic lens. Believe that Judaism is a very feministic religion. I believe that female rights is at top of the priority list. I know it sounds so funny, but it's at the top of the priority list for Kedushin, for Gittin. And I believe the transmission is divine. I also believe that it's been hijacked by other groups of people who have a different skewed perspective, which is patriarchal and objectifying of women. And my battle and my bone to pick is with the people who hijack the narrative for their own agenda, which I guess they can argue is what I'm doing as well, but I'm going to win this war. So it's a feminist religion.
I love it. Yeah, I think and I don't ever, this is mostly about sharing your story. Because it's so close to me, it brings up a lot. But I think my issue is that, and we can leave it at this, and I will also let you have the last word because it's your interview. When I read the literal text of the Bible, and I've done the Bible because it is so obviously a patriarchal thing. There's like 4 women mentioned, and the entire time that they're mentioned is because they're serving some man or they're selling their bodies sexually to make something happen. Exactly to the point of all your quotes, of literally to the point of this campaign that you're running right now. Every single instance almost of women in folklore is like, and then they use sex to get the job done. And it's like, is that feminist? It's cool that they were empowered sexually, but that's the only lens. The only lens. You get Devorah, who was the judge, and then every other time, Miriam's banging a tambourine. That's her big contribution. She's playing the tambourine. And then you get every other time, it's like, and then she slept with him and she killed him and everybody was happy, right? Like, how is that? That's, I think, my credulity. I will let you respond to that and we can move on. But yeah.
I mean, listen, you want me to give specific examples? I don't see it that way. I see, first of all, I think that speaking of the sexual activities of women in the Bible, I see those things incredible, powerful acts that teaches us the power that women have with their capacity to seduce and to seduce. I think that seduction is a very demonized skill set for Jewish women. Why? Because the patriarchy is threatened by it. So that's one. So I don't look at it as women being necessarily objectified. I see it as like one of their swords. And then other aspects, I think women being the mothers and the breeders. And I think that's a massively feminine right for women to be able to be in their feminine and be maternal and chain and tandem nurse from baby to baby. I think these are talking about childbirth, child rearing. I think those are very strong empowerment things. And I don't know if I'm also a volunteer with Ezras Nashim, the first all-female ambulance corps, which is our little rebel against a boys club. And so I do that work also because I'm very passionate about women who are giving birth and helping them in that way. I think it's very strong. And then thirdly, there's so many women in the Bible, in Torah, they're always very conniving. They're conniving with serpent tongues and they're full of trickery. That is basically telling us that women are like magicians. That's great. We're sorceresses. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So I do feel the urge to still push back a little bit further and not on the women's issues because that is interpretive. What about super literal things like gay rights, the classic, stoning gays? And then just off the top of my head, being rabbinical here, the value of a woman being lower than the man when someone takes an oath of value. You know what I'm talking about?
What's that with the oath of it?
When there's a nader, if someone says, I bequeath the value of this human to the Beis Hamikdash, and it's a man is worth 100 shekel and a woman is worth 85. And so that's like over and over again. If that's not an area you have expertise in, we can move on. But those are two things that come to my mind that are like black and white, even like very values based or like very oppressive.
So I just say that I don't believe in black and white interpretations. I believe that the origin text is meant to promote and provoke debate. And for me, it's the debate in and of itself and that discord and the exegesis is where we derive meaning. And to me, it's irrelevant what the original text says.
So you could expound upon it. So if the original, let's dive into that just for a second. If the original text says a man who is with another man shall be put to death, tell me how you interpret that.
So I would read the text exactly in the text. I want to see every single letter. I want to see every single nikuda. I want to see every little ground, and I will be able to derive from there some sort of meaning that's actually something that's very pro-gay rights. Because I could find it for you. If I would actually look, I can derive that meaning from there. There is meaning in there that is pro-gay rights for men, for women, for transgenders in that pasuk, and I can find it for you. I just need to have my serpent sorceresy tongue.
I love it, and I termed it as a Shalom's razor based on Occam's razor, and Shalom's razor says that the literal interpretation is probably the correct one. But I respect the different interpretation around that.
I'm totally the opposite. I'm the opposite.
Okay. There was one thing you mentioned that I would love to explore briefly. You said to yourself, I've been indoctrinated into this. And I'd love to, what does that mean? Like, it's very cool to like name it and be in it, right? What have you been indoctrinated into? What are the beliefs that you have bought into? And what do you think it is that kind of locks you into that belief system?
So I've definitely been successfully indoctrinated of it to like so many aspects, every single aspect of from kite. I believe in a monotheistic God. I believe in that the seventh day is actually like in energetic ways a separated time that has a different energetic capacities. I believe in I do believe in the chosenness of the Jewish tribe. I'm not going to say the superiority of the Jewish tribe, although I recently was sitting next to someone who identified as Christian, and I asked what type, and he was like, "What do you mean type?" And I'm like, "But what type?" He's like, "The type that thinks that Jews are superior because they were chosen." And I was like, "Wow, like I never heard the word superior like from an outsider. I always hear it within the religion because I was just thinking of them as chosen to be the ones to be burdened by carrying out all of these tasks." And he agreed. He said, "Yes, we were burdened with this task." And I do think that I've been indoctrinated to believe that we are separate and different.
Okay. And you believe that, like, have you, let me phrase it this way. Have you ever, how far have you let yourself go as far as checking the ceiling and the walls of the box that you're in? And I'm using the term loosely. I'm not calling you in a box, but like the framework, the frame, right? Have you explored in those directions? Because clearly there's a lot of free thinking and exploring. Is there a point where you won't go anymore? Have you gone there and decided, no, I don't like it here, and come back? Like, where has that been for you?
I've never been someone who had any area of my mind boundaried off, not my mind, not my actions, not my moods. I am very much like a free range chicken, and there's nowhere you can tell me not to go. If there's a fence somewhere, I'm finding a way to get over it or under it.
So your mind has gone to the place of maybe there's no God. Maybe we're not the chosen people. Maybe this happens to be the religion I was born into. And you've come back to the place that you are.
Once he gone and come back, I would say trying to hold like all truths at once and being able and just sort of
Entertained.
exploring it. And not only that, I've also gone as far as complete absolute anarchy and total meaninglessness of everything and total simulation and fake perceptions of visual and audiological input that really have meaning whatsoever. I can hold all realities at once. That's why I love being Orthodox because it's really for me a real choice. I've chosen this prismatic view of things, even though I know that there's hundreds and thousands of colors on the spectrum.
Awesome. I love it. So can I, maybe you've said this already, but I like, this is the point to say. So why did you choose this one?
This what? This what?
This color spectrum of the prism.
Because I feel that this color spectrum of the prism allows me to bend reality the most. There is something about these concepts that I was taught and infused with in the Yaakov system, in the yeshivish system. Things like hashgacha pratis, right? Oh my gosh, there was like a hidden meaning for why that happened. It was planned all along. Basher, destiny, refuah lifnei hamaka, the remedy was there before the plague. Like all of these concepts, and even concepts that have to do with milestones in a person's life, the way shiva done, the way burial is done, the way grief is done. I feel like the religion is very trauma informed. And for me, I've just found my highest level of actualization and catharsis through adopting that belief system. But I also at the same time give myself a lot of creative license to bend things where I need to make it fit. So I think that in many ways does make me a very big heretic for their standards because I'm using it like a theatrical backdrop for living my best life. And they don't hear that for me, it's just a very way of aligning my mindset. They don't want to hear that. But I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they're in it and you're around it and using it. That's the way I describe it. Yeah.
Yes. But I really truly believe that like when I say Tehillim, I like candles, for me, and then I look around at like other communities, like Burning Man energy things. Everyone's looking for rituals to like ground and align and elevate and tap into different parts of themselves. And I'm like, I feel like I can do that through these practices, through candle lighting, through Nagelwasser, through mikvah. And for me, they work and I don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel.
I love it. So continuing from there, I would love your perspective on the change that has been created, maybe changes you've involved in creating, and what you feel goes into creating change in the Frum world, right? Because it's such a, I look at it and I'm like, this is hopeless. Like everyone's so stuck in their ways. And you're like, no, I'm going to keep trying. And you have had successes, right? And so what are the formula? What's the formula that you've seen works to create the change?
So first of all, as someone who is so desiring of seeing change, counterintuitively, I've come to realize that the best way to be a vehicle through which changes me is to accept, you're going to love this, that you'll never see that. You'll never see that change actually play out.
Yeah.
You'll never see it. But but it is, time is not linear. I know that in this alternate dimension, it's already taken root and manifested, and the change is happening. So when you can suspend your need for feeling feedback in the loop of change, then you can make more change. So that's one part of my prescription, because sometimes we don't see that change. We get so frustrated, and it's not really for us. Change is not for us. Change is for our grandchildren. So I'm excited for my granddaughters to be in a safer world where they could even consider getting married with a ksuba, because right now it's not safe for women to get married with ksubas. I don't know if you've heard some of my rants lately, but I've literally been like sounding the alarm, and it's like, Jewish women, you have to start marrying non-Jewish guys. That's safer than getting married. She's pro-assimilation. And I'm like, I'm pro-assimilation for women to marry non-Jewish men if the ksuba is this dangerous. Another aspect of change that I think is formulaic for me is there's no wrong or right way to do it. There's no way to offset the risks, the risk to one's credibility, the risk to potentially creating more damage, like there are a wild west fraught with trapdoors and a lot of dangerous territory. The terrain isn't safe when you're going to advocate for change, and that's just part of it. There's no way to get perfect. There's no way to avoid it. You just have to be willing to get dirty and have the mud on your face. So I think between those two things, the most, recognizing that it is really not neat and it is very scary, and being okay with it, plus knowing that you're not going to see any of the change in your lifetime. Anyone who can accept those realities, they can be a massive change for anything they want.
Amazing. That's a really cool way to think of it. You talk about, well, I guess you've said so many blasphemous things already. I don't even have to ask you why you do open relationship coaching on your Instagram profile, because like it's the least of my questions. But I guess seemingly, again, I'm going to put on my rabbi hat for a second and say, like, technically there's no prohibition for Jewish women to marry a non-Jewish man, right? But seemingly it's very clear that a woman who is married to another man cannot be with another man, right? How do you reconcile open relationships in Orthodoxy?
It's such a hard question. It's very hard for me to answer. I still have not been able to figure out that answer. I'm still chasing that answer. But for now, the way I really try to give context to open marriage counseling in my bio, it's really more about signaling and dog whistling to people that Gittin and Kedushin is still something that could be relevant to you if you want it to be, even if you're in an open relationship. And if you want to get, but you've been sleeping around in your marriage, that they're not contradictory. So it's kind of a way of making it safe for anyone to say, hey, I need to get, but I cheated on my husband, or I need to get, but this or that, or I want shalom bias, and it's just my way of saying you don't have to be one way or another in order to still follow the halakha if it's resonating with you or you feel like a part of it is pulling at you. But I do want, if you can give me, I can tug through ideas when I'm an audience and when I'm on the moment. So I'm going to try to take advantage of this dynamic to think, how could one possibly reconcile that? Like, how could they? I guess what I would answer is that a very smart thing for the Torah to have said as temporary warning when you could not prove paternity and there was no way to track. Because why should it be okay to have multiple husbands and not multiple wives? Because if you can't figure out who the father is, then the biggest risk is the safety of that child. Who's going to be the provider for that child, right? But if you have a paternity system that is scientifically there, then I'm not really sure why a woman can't have several husbands. And I'm not sure why a woman would now no longer be safe for her husband if her husband was possibly this is crazy that I'm thinking like this. Her husband was in the room while she was with someone else, and he's like, go for it. So that would be the way I would answer it. I was being really off the cuff and very.
Cool. You're inspiring me to present a counterpoint. I've heard in the literature around open relationships, because I'm in one, that the counter argument that in some societies it was better to be very open because then you wouldn't know who the father was, and all the men would equally feel responsible to all the children in the tribe, right? It became one big happy family. I love that framing. I don't know if I believe enough in men to think that's actually what happened, but that's a way of thinking. And maybe if it's tribal and you can't just escape to New Brunswick when it doesn't suit you, that it was a better system. So we can both be different sociological snapshots.
No, I like that. It's very thought provoking. I guess I would have to, yes, that's in a society where the masculine is healing its wounds. So then, yes, I love that idea. I remember taking, I forgot the name of the class in school, but I took in college a course with a woman who taught us about like different tribes. And I thought it was always so interesting, the tribes that had multiple husbands. It's a very rare thing, but I think that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because my counterpoint to you is that there's men who haven't worked themselves out enough. They leave even when they know that they're the father, right? It's like there's a window of spectrum of responsibility. Some men can take responsibility for children that are not their own. Some take zero responsibility, and hopefully a nice middle swath can at least be there for their own kids. I have two last questions to you. I'm respectful of the time. The first one is broad. What would you say to somebody who's trying to carve their own relationship with religion, figure out where they stand with it, right? Because such a personal journey, and maybe specifically around social pressure around that, right? Because people are trying to figure out where they stand with religion, and also everybody around them typically is pushing them to be a certain way. And as somebody who is not the way that people are pressuring her to be around, do you have any advice or recommendations for those people?
Yeah, definitely. Think about people who are talented or masters at a certain creative thing, right? Whether they're playing an instrument, they're musicians, or they're painters, or they're chefs. The freedom to be innovative and the trust in oneself to go with one's instinct and not to feel, oh, that's not allowed, right? Since when do you sit down at a piano and someone gives you sheet music and you're like, oh, I can't play that? Or like someone gives you a recipe and you're like, oh, I can't cook that. Obviously, there's kashrus and things like that, but not thinking about it too much out of, am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it right? Allowing oneself to have a little bit more creative license with it. And then once that alignment is there and the desire is there to continue fostering that orientation towards Yiddishkeit, then one to reintroduce more of the technicalities, more of the halachic aspect. First, on a foundational level, I really think that people need to feel less afraid of stepping off the wrong, not doing it the right way. And then you said from a social perspective with family is, I think it's such a difficult question, but my answer is the only person you really need to have a very special and wonderful life is self. You don't need anyone else. And it starts with you and the relationship you have with yourself. And if the relationship with yourself is all it can be, or you're working on that, then really every relationships around you will be like more of a mirror and reflective of that. So I think that if one is struggling to appease someone in their social network, they should really go inside themselves and see what parts of themselves are they at conflict with. Try to hear those own orientations towards self, and then automatically the relationships with other people will just autocorrect on their own.
I love it. It's beautiful. I'm not even going to add to that. I'm going to let that ring. And the last thing that I always offer people on these interviews is I've been asking a lot of questions. Is there anything you want to ask me?
Yeah, I would love to ask you. So you just said that you're in an open relationship. So what does that mean too?
Yes. We were married for 6 years while still religious. When we left religion, when we separated, I left religion. That was my journey, is doing that together. And for 3 months, there was nothing. It was just devastating time of just the breakdown of my marriage. And then it cleared a lot of the bad blood around resentment and stuff like that. And then we got back together after 3 months with a newly defined terms from scratch, renegotiated. And it's been like a poly open relationship ever since. And when people ask me, what's your secret to your happy marriage, which I'm not married, I joke that it's divorce. And what I mean by that more seriously is that a relationship is only as strong as its willingness to fall apart. And it's very hard and very devastating. And the first time it happened to me, it was not even by my own choice. I don't know if I would have had it in me to let my relationship go down to the studs, basically. But every year or two, my partner and I basically go through this of, do we still want to be together? And you have to be able to say no for the yes to count for anything, right? And that is the secret of no, there are no assumptions built in here. And honestly, if I draw that back to the metaphor, I think your relationship with religion is that, where you are willing to not do any of it. And then when you come back to do the parts of religion, you're doing it on your terms, through your interpretation, through your, how does religion serve me? Not how do I serve religion? And that is probably the biggest philosophical difference between you and the people around you, because they're like, I serve God. And you're almost like, I don't know if I'm going to blaspheme on your behalf. God serves me. And that is a huge difference. Then you can live a free life of really enjoying it. I was never able to reconcile it. I was too bought into this is true. I need to come out of that box.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think it's very connected. Exactly what you said. Definitely, it's only a relationship is only as strong as one's willingness to renegotiate and potentially. And I think that this is actually something, by the way, that Gittin totally supports. Gittin does. They say, like, "Oh, the Mizbeach cries when it's a divorce." No, it doesn't. Gittin is a gift that was given to Bnei Yisrael, just like Shabbos was, and it literally is all about, as long as you have conscious coupling and conscious uncoupling, you can do it as many times as you want.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Amazing, Adina. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, that was very good. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond Belief. If you found the episode inspiring, please share it with others who might benefit from it, and be sure to subscribe to it to get updates about future episodes.
Adina, welcome to...
No, we have to start again. It's not my
Okay.
name for this.
Exact. Oh, do you not want to go with your actual name?
I go with Flatbush Girl. What are you saying? Does Batman
Nobody
go
d-
by Bruce when he's on?
Does nobody know your name, Adina?
Of course they do, but I didn't. We're not
Okay,
friends.
fine. I'll respect. Yeah, okay, fine. I'll respect your thing.